Imagine the balance on all your credit cards is zero. Your vehicles are all paid for. You have no loans for equipment or past holidays or education or anything else. In fact, the only debt you have is your mortgage. And finally, after 10 years, your mortgage has just reached the point where the interest payments are less than the principal. Imagine today you received a registered letter from a lawyer saying that the bank is not renewing your mortgage because you are insolvent and they are going to foreclose unless you can come up with the full mortgage plus their legal fees in 1 day. Hello, my name is Rick Cheeseman, and what you just saw actually happened to us. What the bank did to us is almost unbelievable, but everything I'm about to tell you really happened. And in case you are wondering, I do have documents from the bank itself that prove it all. Thanks for watching, and please keep my wife in your thoughts and prayers. We have had a mortgage on our property for 10 years, and it has always been in good standing. February 2015 was the first month when the principal part of the payment was greater than the interest. That felt very good. Though the mortgage was up for renewal in January, the bank had been 4 months late with the renewal in 2010, so we weren't worried. Our lawyer later commented that since the bank withdrew the payments in January, February, March, and April of 2015, they had effectively renewed the mortgage even though the formal agreement was not yet in place. My job was secure, and in early March my wife received diagnostic confirmation that she was finally free of a life-threatening illness that she had been fighting relentlessly since 2009. We had no loans or card debts. Our mortgage was our only debt and it was in good standing. We had a reliable income and we were healthy. On March 20th, 2015, my wife and I both received registered mail from a bank-appointed lawyer demanding that we pay the mortgage in full, about $150,000, plus legal fees, by March 23rd, or the bank would foreclose because we were insolvent. What? Except for the mortgage, we owed nothing to anybody for anything, and our mortgage was and always had been in good standing. We were about as far from insolvent as anyone can get. We were shocked and stunned beyond belief. March 20, 2015 was a Friday. We had 1 day to pay out the mortgage or lose our home. Adding injury to insanity, our insolvency had been reported to a branch of the government. Insolvency was a lie, reporting it libel. The Royal Bank of Canada, the largest bank in Canada and the 32nd largest in the world, had just trashed our reputation and was poised to take our home from us, on the basis of a lie. And what were a cabal of heartless bankers going to do with all the animals and their guardian dogs? The possibilities were horrific. My wife immediately called RBC's lawyer. "I represent the bank," was his answer to every question. On March 25th, I was told that the foreclosure action was going to start on March 26th if we did not pay out the mortgage in full. Twice I called RBC's customer service, and both times they confirmed that our mortgage was in perfect standing and that there was nothing in our files that indicated we had defaulted on anything. Clearly, we had to get a lawyer to defend against this insanity. Money we did not have, yet the alternative was losing our home and our family. On March 25th, my wife had a previously scheduled appointment with her regular doctor. He had seen her just 2 weeks ago, and he was shocked by her condition. Here are some quotes from his report. "A dangerous deterioration in her condition. A state of shock so severe I considered it to be life-threatening. It is my professional opinion that the actions initiated by the Royal Bank have put Mrs. Cheeseman at high risk of a catastrophic collapse of her health, quite possibly leading to a recurrence of the cancer." Despite great mental, emotional, and physical distress, within a week my wife had managed to arrange financing from 2 sources: a dear friend who was going to help us by taking out a loan against their home, and our local credit union. On April 10th, we met with our lawyer. Even with 30 years' experience dealing with banks and mortgages, he was incredulous. He was about to become much more so. Our lawyer asked RBC's lawyer to provide a final payout. RBC's lawyer provided one. It was $70,000 more than the amount he had quoted on March 20th, plus $3,000 on top of that for professional fees. Our lawyer was shocked, both by the immense increase and by the breach of ethical standards to make such a huge change in a payout provided only a couple of weeks ago, and $3,000 for professional fees was beyond excessive. This 50% increase in the payout knocked both our potential lenders out of the running. Other than the mortgage, we were debt-free. Our mortgage was in perfect standing, yet we were going to lose our home and farm. RBC's lawyer claimed that the $70,000 was a loan we had defaulted on. My wife found a final statement for the loan from 2011 showing that the loan had been paid in full. Up until now, RBC's actions had seemed insane, but the illicit $70,000 went far beyond that. It now appeared that these were deliberate, directed actions aimed at stealing our farm from us. What else could we think? What would you think? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines fraud as the intentional perversion of truth in order to induce another to part with something of value or to surrender a legal right. Within an hour of seeing the final statement, RBC's lawyer claimed that the $70,000 was a mistake on his part alone and not the bank's. You need to know that RBC's lawyer does not work for the bank directly, but for a law firm that the bank retains to do its dirty work. So it was impossible that this was his mistake. He had the loan number, and that could only have come from RBC. A bit later that day, a senior vice president called my wife to assure her that the $73,000 was off the table. If my wife had not been able to find that statement, do you think RBC's lawyer would have backpedaled so fast? Would a senior vice president have called to tell us that the $73,000 was off the table? Is this what a cover-up looks like? What else could it be? How far up RBC's hierarchy did this go? By now we were exhausted. We felt we had been under attack from vicious bullies for eons. As days passed, our lawyer was becoming increasingly worried that RBC was stalling in order to find another way to attack us. How did RBC stall? By having their lawyer repeatedly provide payouts with the condition that this statement is not to be used for a payout or sale transaction. The senior vice president had given us a deadline of April 30th for payout, and if we didn't pay by that time, then all actions against us would resume and all professional fees would be back on the table. If the refusal to provide an unconditional payout wasn't a stall tactic, what was it? What do you think? RBC said that they were not renewing the mortgage, but were doing everything they could to make sure we could not pay it out. Finally, on April 29th, RBC's lawyer agreed with our lawyer's calculation of a final payout. The Royal Bank of Canada had capitulated. The mortgage was paid out on May the 4th. We probably should have felt some euphoria, but the personal cost, emotionally, mentally, and physically, had been very high. We just felt relief. We thought this horrible ordeal was finally over. It was not. As we signed the final papers, we learned that after our mortgage is paid out, there is a release of mortgage statement that the previous lender provides declaring that they have no claim on the property. A bank has up to 6 months to provide the release, but our lawyer's experience was that RBC usually provided it within 2 weeks tops. He cautioned us that even though the release was a formality, given the way RBC had acted, he did not think we should take any legal action until the release was provided. We said we would be worried until we had it. He agreed and said that we should be. In May, my wife had her annual appointment with her cancer surgeon. Here are some quotes from his letter. She is doing well, although she has had a great deal of financial stress related to her farm. Higher stressful situations do increase the likelihood of recurrence. MRI done in March showed no evidence of new or recurrent disease. I am quite happy with how she is doing. I would like to see her again in a year, and if all is well, I will discontinue active follow-up. In other words, her surgeon was sure that she was cured. Weeks turned into months as we waited for the release of mortgage. To us, this felt like more bullying and abuse from the bank. Our lawyer had concluded our initial meeting with the comment that RBC's actions seemed vindictive, as if someone was out to get us. This was so incongruous with his quiet, objective, and professional approach that it stayed with us. By July, it was easy to believe that the release of mortgage was delayed because it was the only way left to hurt us. The release of mortgage was finally issued on August 10th, but our lawyer's request for notification had been ignored, and he did not find out until he inquired on August 25th. We did not wait for the release of mortgage to investigate our legal options. For those who are interested, there is a link to an explanation of those options. These legal bits are easy to understand, but not necessary to understand what RBC did to us next. The bottom line is that RBC gets off scot-free just because they are so big and brutish. This despite the fact that we had thousands of dollars in legal fees, and the extra interest on the new mortgage is $4,000 in 1 year alone. Though the extra interest gets rolled into the mortgage payment, the legal fees were paid in cash using tax refunds. Without that extra cash, we were now unable to purchase anti-cancer supplements that had been a cornerstone of my wife's recovery. We knew then that their availability was critical for her continued health. With the release of mortgage in hand, our property was finally safe. Though there was nothing we could do legally, in good conscience I could not let RBC's actions go unaddressed. So on September 7th, I sent registered letters to David Mackay, Chief Executive Officer of RBC, and Kathleen Taylor, Chair of the Board. On September 29th, I returned a call from a Jason Zomock of RBC. He explained that it was his department that had initiated all the actions against us and that he was told to investigate and prepare a report. It wasn't until after I hung up that I realized what I had just heard. Not only had the CEO and chair of RBC kicked our extremely painful experience down the corporate ladder, they had turned the investigation of the assaults over to the people who had perpetrated them. How was that different from turning the investigation of a crime over to the criminals who committed it? To us, it was a degree of callousness and arrogance that felt sickening and profoundly wrong. On October 2nd, a courier pulled up with a letter from RBC. We refused delivery. Amazingly, when word got back to Zomock, he had the courier call to ask us why, as he must have known the last letter from RBC that we signed for in March precipitated one of the worst episodes in our lives. His question reaffirmed the total lack of empathy of anyone at RBC. A few days later, Zomock emailed his report to me. I did not open it for weeks. It was the criminal reporting on his crime. I just didn't want to know. When I finally read Zomock's report, I was appalled. As one would expect from a criminal investigating his own crime, not only was RBC blameless, but it was also all our fault. Outright lies and gross misrepresentation of the truth permeated the report. It was depressing and disturbing. I knew I could not let this be the last word on our ordeal, but I simply could not face any more of this unrelenting and remorseless evil. I did nothing. Back in mid-July, our herding dog and house guardian had begun behaving in a way that my wife recognized but did not want to acknowledge. The pulley had acted exactly the same way some years ago, before we knew for sure that my wife had cancer. In mid-November, my wife's cancer surgeon confirmed what we already knew. The cancer had returned. On December 8, 2015, the CEO and chair of the board of RBC received my second registered letter to them. In that letter, I thoroughly refuted the most repugnant of Zomock's many illicit assertions. Whatever legal doubt there might be that the stress from RBC's attempts to steal our property were significant in causing the return of my wife's cancer, can there be any doubt in anyone's mind that RBC abused us systematically and repeatedly and without remorse? You know what our answer is. For that reason, for the first time, I requested a settlement, enough to cover the cancer therapies that can save my wife's life. The amount I asked for is less than a fraction of a percent of RBC's quarterly profits. That is, less than nothing to them, but an impossible amount for us. I also asked Mackay and Taylor several times if they had been duped by their staff or were they duplicitous. I still believe that if they had been duped, then they would have found a way to reach out and offer us the financial support I requested. They responded to my first letter in a couple of weeks. It is now May 2016, and I have heard nothing. My wife spent the Christmas holiday dealing with the deep pain from the new and deadly presence in her body. Both of her doctors were unavailable, so she was left wondering what that pain meant. There are no happy places to go with that one. The infusions were ramped up immediately after she received the diagnosis in November, and she is still in great pain from the surgery in March. It will be months before we know if that pain will subside or will be with her for the rest of her life. Either way, right now it is making her life's work and joy, farming, very, very difficult. Adding to the physical pain is the knowledge that the post-op pathology report was not good. I hate asking myself this question, but has the bank killed my wife? If you would like to do something, you could share this with all your friends. I doubt we are the only ones in RBC's crosshairs. You may help give a voice to others they are attacking, and we might get some help too. If you bank with RBC, you could move everything you can to another institution. The only way to make these pariahs change their ways is to hit their bottom line. To paraphrase Anna Lepay, what we do with every dollar is a vote for the world we want. Do you want RBC to lead the way for themselves and other banks to do this kind of thing to others? To you. If you bank with any chartered bank, move everything you can to a local credit union. Credit unions are run locally, respond to local issues and values, and all profits go back into the local economy. I leave it entirely up to you to decide what actions are appropriate for you. However, there is one thing I would ask of you. Please pray for my wife. Her name is Sue. Thank you.